All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out on a weeknight here to the George Washington University. My name is Richard Haddock. I'm the Assistant Director at the Seeger Center for Asian Studies, as well as the Co-Director for the Taiwan Education and Research Program. I just wanted to give a quick welcome to all of our guests here for this is the first public event that the Taiwan Education Research Program is putting on this academic year, and we're so happy to be doing it co-hosting with the Global Taiwan Institute, one of our great friends here in DC, doing great outreach programming on Taiwan. Just a little bit about GW TERP. The Taiwan Education and Research Program is meant to produce academic outreach and opportunities for students at GW for the holistic study of Taiwan. So often in DC, there is a focus on geopolitical, geoeconomic, national security issues. And what TERP tries to do is, on top of that, provide opportunities to look into the arts, culture, humanities, public diplomacy, governance, other areas of Taiwan history, society, and politics as well. So we're very excited to be having everyone here tonight joining us for this event. And I'd like to pass the mic now to Carissa Chung, who is the Global Taiwan Institute's Yahui Cho Summer Fellow. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Good evening to all of you who are here in person and anyone who is joining us on the live stream. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Carissa Chang, and it has been a great honor and pleasure to be the 2025 Yahui Chiu Summer Fellow at the Global Taiwan Institute. So I just want to read a little bit of an introduction to our think tank. The Global Taiwan Institute is a 501c3 think tank dedicated to insightful, cutting-edge, and inclusive research on policy issues regarding Taiwan and the world. GTI's mission is to enhance the relationship between Taiwan and other countries, especially the United States, through policy research and programs that promote better public understanding about Taiwan and its people. To realize the vision and mission of GTI, our programs include the bi-weekly Global Taiwan Brief, public seminars such as this one, podcasts, and our annual symposium, which took place last week and which you can watch on our YouTube channel. Before we dive into our event this evening, I would like to thank the GTI staff and my fellow interns from both the summer and the fall for inspiring me, mentoring me, and making this event possible, as well as the Taiwan Education and Research Program, TERP, here at GW for co-hosting this event. So tonight's event is called Representing Taiwan in DC, How Taiwanese Americans Can Bridge Culture and Policy. And the reason why I wanted to organize this event is because one of the things that drew me to GTI is the fact that, unlike most think tanks, our think tank publishes research articles and podcast episodes on culture and people-to-people ties. As Mr. Haddock was saying, I do think it is a little bit unfortunate that most Taiwan policy spaces are almost exclusively focused on defense, trade, and technology. And while these, of course, remain important, we cannot forget to also make room for conversations about summer camps, baseball games, Taiyi language classes, and other forms of community organizing. Taiwan cannot underestimate the value of soft power, especially when transmitted globally by its overseas Taiwanese diaspora as a tool of visibility and cultural diplomacy at a time when Taiwan's official diplomatic capabilities are limited. On the other hand, it is also true that you cannot understand Taiwan's culture without its history and modern-day politics. So to me, it seemed very clear that Taiwan-related policymaking and cultural organizing must be mutually informed by one another, especially here in DC, our nation's capital, where the most important decisions about US-Taiwan relations are made. So with that context in mind, I am very happy and honored to highlight 3 local Taiwanese American leaders whose work represents this integration of cultural organizing and political activism. So how this evening will unfold is I will introduce each of these speakers right before they give their opening remarks. After all 3 of them have spoken, we will hear from Mr. Haddock as he gives his remarks as a discussant. And then all of us will transition to this Q&A table and we'll open the floor to questions. So if you're here in person, you can just raise your hand. If you're tuning in through the live stream, you can send your questions into the YouTube live stream chat or email contact@globaltaiwan.org with your name, affiliation, and question, and those comments will be passed on to me. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our first speaker, who is Tim Chang. Tim Chang is a principal software developer at Yahoo Inc. and a longtime advocate for Taiwanese American and Asian Pacific American communities. He is a co-founder of ITASA, the Intercollegiate Taiwanese American Students Association, and a volunteer at TANG, Taiwanese American Next Generation. A Baltimore resident since 1999, he serves on the Board of Trustees for the Baltimore School for the Arts, the Maryland Governor's Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs, and as the president of the FAPA Maryland chapter. So give it up for Tim.
Okay. All right. So I'm here to present myself more as a Taiwanese American community activist versus a collegiate organization a 54-year-old should have nothing to do with. So as an elder in our community, I would like to first go with history, because history is sort of how old people like to start out with, right? And so my perspective as a community activist, I'll first start out with a question to all of you in the room who do not know me personally. Hopefully you guys can answer this. Does anyone know what this symbol means? Anyone? Just shout it out if you have it. No one? No one. So that actually says something. So anyone involved with the Taiwanese American Citizens League, Taiwanese Association for America, or FAPA should know that this symbol is the root of the entire world diaspora of Taiwan activism. This is actually the symbol for the World United Formosans for Independence, Taiwan Tolit Wundong. So I'd start with saying the personal is political. I don't know if you guys know the man on the far left, but that's Peng Ming-min. He was the first candidate for the Democratic Progressive Party in 1995, and he had escaped as a dissident in 1970 from Taiwan. And in the middle is my father, my mom, and the little guy's me. And the thing is, my father was one of the founding members of the World United Formosans for Independence. And as that founding member, and as that passion, and as that drive for the community, he named me Tim after, as you see, Taiwanese independence movement. You know, that is the passion and the drive that generation had. And for those of you guys involved with TACL or TAP, Lee Pei-Wu, the founder of TACL, was a member of the World United Formosans for Independence. You know, the first few presidents of FAPA were all members of the World United Formosans for Independence. And this organization actually in the 1960s and 70s saw themselves as the vanguard for Taiwan. So they started at the height of white terror and martial law. And they were willing to risk themselves and their family members to stand up for democracy, human rights, and the rights of Taiwanese people to have their own stance of being an independent nation. And they were willing to do it by any means necessary. And I think it's important to note that this conviction that this generation had to fight for Taiwan's freedom is most likely why we even have conversations for Taiwan's democracy, because authoritarians don't give up power unless there's a demand. And this organization, WUFI, had chapters in South America, Japan, Europe, all over North America, Canada, US, and even underground cells in Taiwan. So it's an important thing to note that people fought hard and were willing to sacrifice everything. Like if there was a family of 5, only one of the sons were allowed to be a WUFI member because that son was willing to go to jail in that sense. And this is how it was broken down across families. So, okay, so I talked about woofie, right? So how does that relate to public policy? What does a banner like this have to do with Nancy Pelosi? So in 1972, woofie was founded in 1970. In 1972, woofie had a rally in Washington, D.C. And it was a large rally where my dad told me there was 1,000 people. I was born in 71, right? So this is all circumstantial through my dad's eyes of history. But he said there were 1,000 people, but I'll show you a Japanese news clipping that said there was just 300 to 400. So it's probably somewhere in between. But it was, according to my father, this was the largest gathering of Taiwanese people in a mass demonstration ever in the United States. And this was the banner that the Cincinnati group used when they drove from Cincinnati, Ohio to DC. And they came from Canada and all over the United States. You see independence from Cincinnati. Each person carried a Taiwan, and then one person carried the independence sign. And at the rally in the Lincoln Monument, one of the woofie members who happened to work on Capitol Hill brought my dad's role at woofie was he was sat on the central committee, and he got to he was brought in to he was sort of doing the political education, and the daughter of the mayor of Baltimore was brought to him, Nancy D'Alessandro, and she came and sat with my father where they talked about Gigi Bat 228, white terror, the aspirations of Taiwanese to have self-determination. They had long conversation while the rally was going on. They actually had congressmen speak. It was a well-organized rally with that many people right at the steps of the Lincoln Monument. And, when Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan, the first place she went to visit was the National Human Rights Museum. So it gives you a sense that she remembers the conversation that those independence activists had way back when she was just a congressional aide in 1972. So it's a sense that, like, even when you talk to someone, your classmate here at GW, about Taiwan, you never know where they may end up, and I think that's an important thing to note. And this is the article in the Japanese news. Now, there's so many stories about woofie and the work they've done, and very few people in Taiwan even know these stories. So this independent Taiwan is, if you click on that, if you scan that link, that is actually going to be their newsletter from 1972 up until 1979. Right now, there's only 5 issues up, but there eventually will be 79 issues up. And you could hear it from them, their own voices, not my voice, their voices, their published voices. And this newsletter is very hard to find because it's paper. My dad happened to leave me 79 copies before a copy of issue 1 to 79 before he passed away. So I'm planning to scan all 79 on this Instagram page for anyone interested to learn this history and hear their voices as how they wrote that. So that's history. This is article from 1972, Personals Political. Oh yeah, and this is some of the political cartoons. I thought this is funny because this is from their April issue of 1972. And basically it's, I think that's Zhang Jingguo talking about how great China is. Everything is perfect. It's very similar to the propaganda we hear from the PRC now on how great China is. So the thing is, I thought it was interesting that in 1972, this political cartoon that they had is very similar to the things we laugh about when PRC talks about how great the PRC is for everyone, even in today's world. So the battle, those struggles not over, So now back to the actual prompts. Taiwanese policymakers versus Taiwanese community organizations. So my observation as a community activist is often think tanks tend to work very separated from the people that are directly affected. Like, they come up with policies, they come up with papers, but they often don't even interact that closely with the people who are most directly affected by the policies they're pushing. And then as far as community and cultural workers, there's a lot of people in the community that want to avoid politics. And so then a lot of these community and cultural groups actually avoid politics. But my perspective as a Taiwanese American community activist is being Taiwan, seeing Taiwan and Taiwanese culture, everything is political. There's no avoidance of it. You know, you can try to avoid it, but in the end, it is. And people who don't want to recognize that often run into this problem eventually. For example, our favorite policy, strategic ambiguity, right? Strategic ambiguity, the thought of strategic ambiguity is that we're going to avoid war, right? With strategic ambiguity. That's the whole motivation. We don't want to offend China so they don't attack. But what does that happen? It leads to the invisibility of Taiwan. You know, that invisibility affects the self-esteem of most Taiwanese people. It also creates a fuzzier identity for Taiwanese people. And a fuzzy identity creates weaker national cohesion, as we see that exists in Taiwan. And then the whole goal of strategic ambiguity is to keep Taiwan in its current status, which is de jure independence from China. And with weaker national cohesion, there's less of a deterrence. It turns out it makes the PRC think they actually have a better chance. Versus if in 1996, Clinton just said, screw it, Taiwan's independent now, just go, you know, then it would be over. You know, China wasn't strong enough in 1996 to do anything. They'd be pissed. But if those of you guys who were around in 97 during the missile crisis, when China launched missiles to try to affect the election in Taiwan, some of their missiles hit China. So they're not a serious threat. And by wanting to avoid the angering of China, they actually made the problem bigger. And part of that is also policymakers in DC were not really in touch on how strategic ambiguity might actually affect the psyche of the people in Taiwan. So, oh, political and cultural. How many of you guys know this picture? Yeah. So this is cultural. 1971, Taiwan won the Little League World Series, right? And it was big news. It was televised live in Taiwan, and then, later. So WUFI, as an organization, said, "Oh, this is an opportunity to send a message to Taiwan." So they hired the plane and this banner, where in English it says "Go Go Taiwan," while in Taigi it says "Taiwan Do Li Ban Sui," right? So Taiwan independent, hooray for Taiwan independence, right? And this was televised live in Taiwan, and the cameras naturally pans up when there's when this banner happens. And we know people where at people who were in Taiwan said all of a sudden there was a blip in the broadcast because the KMT, in their effort to censor this, they had to stop the broadcast to restate it. So this is a chance where a cultural event, you could insert politics in there, which affects policy because it affects the psyche of Taiwanese people. This was another opportunity, which Taiwan Sister Cities last year, not this year's Bubble Tea Fest, brought in these Elan award-winning dancers. They were the #1, they were first place dancers in Taiwan, and they came and performed at the Bubble Tea Fest. I wear another hat as the board member for the Baltimore School for the Arts. And so I was like, oh, let's bring them to Baltimore City and let them perform for the children in Baltimore. Or they're high school students, adolescents, whatever, you know. And so we brought them to perform at the Baltimore School for the Arts stage. And, you know, I thought it was an amazing experience where you mixed culture and politics and community all at once, you know. So it exposed these Baltimore City kids who usually don't interact with Taiwanese culture, you know, with award-winning dance. And I saw the dance instructor, because the School for the Arts is half the day is arts instruction, half the day is academic. The dance instructor had these serious talks with their dancers after, like, you want to dance like that? We need to focus, right? Because those girls were amazing. So now we'll talk about how to be a Taiwan advocate, right? I mean, most of you guys probably are in your own way. Obviously, for advocacy, you just need to in politics, you need to figure out your target area of change. There's the federal target, state target, and city target, right? And federal target, congressional advocacy. I happen to serve as the chair of FAPA Maryland. There is Annie Xiao, our executive director. And those of you guys who are interested, we have two other staff members for FAPA, Felix and Henry there, and interested in congressional advocacy on the federal level, that's a QR code for the FAPA HQ Instagram page. And I think it's worth a follow for anyone interested in how to do Taiwan advocacy on the federal level. On the state government level, I sit on the Maryland Governor's Office for Community Initiatives. And this is a volunteer position. I am the only Taiwanese person in that commission for Maryland. I think there might not even be a Taiwanese person in the state government position in Virginia. And how many of you guys heard about the Linda Sun case in New York? Yes. So Linda Sun was the person who's arrested for being a PRC spy in the New York. She was the deputy chief of staff for Governor Hochul in the New York state government. And I think it's important to note that not all state governments actually do security clearances on their employees. So if someone potentially takes money from a foreign entity, they may not be caught in state government. And so state government advocacy is also very important. And anyone interested in state government advocacy, there is so many opportunities to volunteer. Of course, we don't all have that much time, but I think, like I said, it's important to know where to focus. And from city government, I gave the example of Taiwan sister cities. And that was the soft culture power that Clarissa mentioned. I think that's also critical. And one of the reasons we actually were pushing for that is actually Rockville and Elon have a sister cities relationship. The Taiwan Sister Cities organization tried to build that same relationship with Kaohsiung and Baltimore City. But Xiamen already developed a sister city relationship with Baltimore City. And Xiamen, the Chinese sister city, is like, we will only do this sister city relationship if you refuse a Taiwanese city. And so our sister cities was blocked. And so again, advocacy on federal, state, and city is important. And you can't not forget one of them. And so the BSA, Baltimore School for the Arts attempt, was my backdoor attempt of hoping that maybe we could get the advocate of our principal to advocate to get Kaohsiung back on the table. But it's a process. And so these are the areas that I was going to talk about as Taiwan advocacy. And it all relates to community, right? Because in community and cultural organizations, obviously you have Taiwan sister cities. Any of us or anyone we knew can create art, because creation of art is from presenting the struggle of Taiwan and Taiwanese people is critical. Storytelling, that's also critical. And one of the most important things that I've been frustrated with is there's so many quality movies coming out of Taiwan. Big, right? Big was a great movie. If you guys watched that movie about the cancer ward in Taiwan, everyone was in the theater, bawling their eyes out when they watched that movie. And it brings Taiwanese people as human beings to anyone who's had to deal with cancer. And in order to watch that, you needed a Taiwanese community organization to rent out a theater for it to be shown in that region just for a day. We don't have like the ability to build a distribution network for quality Taiwanese movies to just be shown across theaters in the United States, probably not even in the world. It's like, so all this type of, this would be huge from a cultural soft power perspective of making distribution of Taiwanese cultural products that Taiwan makes, which is of high quality, available for everyone. And I just mentioned already political advocacy. There's street actions. The street actions now are slightly different than in the past, but Keep Taiwan Free did a UN rally in New York City. Government advocacy, which I think is critical at this time and stage, as GTI knows. And FAPA is a grassroots way where anyone can get involved. You don't have to be a famous politician or high in policy. If you just care, you can write your congressperson and you can exercise the levers of democracy in this country. And FAPA focuses on the federal level, but there's people in FAPA that have been involved in the state level, like Annie worked for the governor's office of Oregon. And there's also the city level. And so there's so many ways from government advocacy. But if in the end, any Taiwanese person just needs to make their voice heard. You can write letters to the editor. You can publish your own articles on your own blog. You can even do your own podcasts. And there's all these examples where you can even do vidcasts where you can make your voice heard and to stand up and make your voice known. And I think, oops. Yeah, I wanted to end with a quote from President Tsai. And I'll just read it out loud. Some countries, when they face external pressure, the people actually get stronger. I also believe in Taiwanese people's ability to face the difficulties and not give up, to constantly maintain our strong determination. This is my wish for Taiwanese people. And I believe that Taiwanese people have this power. At the same time, I often tell our young people, as Taiwanese, we don't have the right to choose to sit at home. We only have one choice, and that is every Taiwanese has to go out to every corner of the world and make the world see Taiwan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim. And next, we will have Adam Pierre. So Adam is a data professional and community leader based in the DMV area. He works in data analytics for the federal government, where he develops tools to support law enforcement investigations. Within the Taiwanese American community, Adam has served as a board member and president of Taiwanese American Professionals DC, and was director of civic engagement with the Taiwanese American Citizens League through 2024. He has organized voter outreach campaigns, cultural programs, and community events to strengthen Taiwanese American civic participation and representation, including the Right in Taiwan campaign for the 2020 census. So please give it up for Adam.
All right. My name is Adam Pear, and I'm a current committee member of TACL. So today I'll go through my personal story and then go into how that inspired me into Taiwanese American organizing. And then I'll go through a few takeaways. But before my personal story, let me see if I could get this to work. Let me just do a brief intro of TACL or TACL and TAP DC. So TACL, it's a national organization that was started 40 years ago in 1985. The mission is to enhance the quality of life of Taiwanese Americans. And it was really inspired after JACL, the Japanese American Citizens League. And currently, we organize 2 conventions per year, one in the spring and one in the fall, that brings together around 150 board members of our 13 different programs. So within our 13 different programs, we have 11 TAP chapters. So TAP chapters on the West Coast, like Seattle, San Francisco, and then here on the East Coast, DC and New York. In addition to the TAP chapters, we also have 2 summer camps. Life and LID. Life, it's a summer camp K through 12 in NorCal, and LID in SoCal. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Austin, Texas. I was born in Taiwan, moved to Texas when I was 3 years old. And I grew up in a upper middle class neighborhood. A lot of the folks there, the parents, they were engineers, they were in tech. So naturally, where there are lots of engineers, there are lots of Asians, right? So it was a very Asian American friendly community when I was in Texas. But there were really 2 moments that come up in my mind when I think about my Taiwanese American experience there. First was when I was in kindergarten. My kindergarten teacher went up to me and asked me, what's the difference between China and Taiwan? Like, I don't know why you would ask a 5, 6-year-old that, but I got asked that question and I had no idea. Because my best friend at the time, he was Chinese and we spoke the same language and ate the same food. And when I went back home to my parents, they also didn't give me a straight answer. So that made me very confused. And then once in high school, when I was in high school, I was a lazy student and we had to take a second language. So I took Chinese. Um, and in our Chinese classroom, we had a world map in the back of my classroom. And for some reason, I don't know what the reason was, but some of my Chinese friends were like, oh, Taiwan, there's no such thing as Taiwan, it's China. And what I realized at that time, and now looking back, is that even though I grew up in such an Asian friendly space, like it should be a space where I feel embraced, my identity was still being erased. So those were like the two main takeaways from my childhood. And in addition to that, my parents did a great job in the cultural aspect. I hated Chinese school, but they made sure that every Sunday I showed up to that Chinese school. And that Chinese school, it was run by Taiwanese folks. We learned the Bapamafa and the traditional characters. And they have after school activities like Chinese yo-yo, Go, Chinese chess. So I was very integrated in that Taiwanese culture. But what really started my Taiwanese American identity journey? So my childhood laid the groundwork. But I think my Taiwanese American identity, I really began to explore it with these 2 summer programs. AID summer, this is 3 weeks in Taiwan, 2 weeks of teaching English in the countryside, and then 1 week of going around the island and having fun. And then Taiwan Tech Trek, this is a program where you work at a company or at a university for the summer. So AID summer, I taught English in Zhanghua for 2 weeks. In the Taiwan Tech Trek, I worked in a lab at National Taiwan University. And I think through those experiences, it taught me how to be proud to be a Taiwanese American. For example, they would take us to places like this indigenous village in Hualien or a Hakka village in Miaoli. And we'd go to the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial and learn about how many tens of thousands of people died for Taiwan's democracy. So through those experiences, it really lit that fire in me to do more as a Taiwanese American. And I also think like I'm probably the best return on investment that the Taiwanese government can have. Like OCAC and most, they spent all this money on me, and it's really paid off. And then my public service and civic engagement journey. This really started when I was in college. After my first year in college, I was an engineer, and it's very hard to get any internship in college, right? So I couldn't find an engineering internship. But I knew this auntie, and she was involved in an organization called APAPA, Asian Pacific American Islander Public Affairs. Yeah, and she told me to apply for her internship, so I did. And then she placed me in the office of John Cornyn, senator from Texas. So I worked there, and it was a very rewarding experience. Like you get to, like constituents come in, talk to you, you pick up their phone calls, and like something as simple as like expediting someone's passport makes a huge impact in someone's life. So that's really where I got started. And then that's continued to this day. Like if you see that picture on the right, you see Clifton right there. He was the organizer. But that was in my personal capacity, a Taiwanese Americans for Harris rally here in DC. So this is something that has carried from my high school days all the way until now. So civic engagement and passionate about Taiwanese American identity, that naturally flows into TAP and TAP DC and TACL. So I spent 2 years as the president of TAP DC, and in my first year, I think before I became president, actually in 2019, we had the Write-in Taiwanese campaign, and if you don't know, on the census, there is a checkbox where you can select what ethnicity you are, and there are checkboxes for like the larger ethnicities, like Indian, Chinese, Japanese, right? But there's nothing to capture Taiwanese. So we really wanted to encourage our members in the Taiwanese community to write that in, so our community is counted. And this is very important because we can go to a policymaker and say, hey, like we have 1,000 or 2,000 Taiwanese Americans in your district. Let's create like an Asian American resource center, right? So it's very important for the allocations of funds and projects. And the second thing we ran into during the COVID-19 pandemic is the Stop AAPI Hate. First was like incidents in New York, and then the Atlanta spa shooting. And I think the one that impacted our community most was the Laguna Woods shooting, because that was like Taiwanese on Taiwanese crime, right? Purely because of political motivations. And during that time, we provided our community with lots of different resources. Like we brought in mental health professionals, self-defense trainings, and we just wanted to offer all the necessary resources that can help support our community. Next is my time at TACL. In 2024, we had several initiatives. First is the Tackle the Vote campaign. Similar to the census, like we want to make sure our voices are heard and they're heard at the ballot box. And then secondly, we organized a convention in DC, our 2024 National Tackle Convention. And at this convention, we tried to bring in different speakers and leaders throughout the government. So in this picture, you see Ambassador Tai, just so that we can show our people that, okay, like Taiwanese American people can be in a position of leadership. And these are the different types of policies that can impact our community. And then finally, some last thoughts, policy versus cultural spaces. I think for me personally, they go hand in hand. The cultural is kind of like my driver and my fire, and then that translates to the political and policy. And I think these spaces have very different demographics too. I think in the policy spaces, like a space like this, I usually see more younger folks, but at a more grassroots level, like FAPA, I definitely see a lot more older folks, probably folks who experienced when Taiwan was in a period of martial law, all right? So that makes it very close to them. How can you make a difference? I think there are 3 ways. First is the civic engagement aspect. Go vote, go talk to your representatives. The second way is join a community, like join FAPA. I know they had their National Advocacy Conference a couple weeks ago. Join TACL, join TAP DC. And then I think the final way is on the personal level. Just talk about Taiwan with your friends. Sometimes my friends tell me that my whole personality is Taiwan because I talk about it so much. And then Taiwan policymakers versus cultural organizers. I think from the Taiwanese policymakers side, I feel like us as cultural organizers can learn more about how our domestic politics impact real issues in Taiwan. One example I can think of is, like I've talked to my uncle, and my uncle is selling cars in Taiwan, but he's under a lot of stress right now because people are waiting for that whole tariff talk because they're anticipating a lower tariff and cheaper cars. So that's one thing. And then what can policymakers learn from organizers? I think the first thing is they need some English language resources. In my experience with dealing with the Taiwanese government, I get an email completely in Chinese, and my Chinese is extremely broken. So I still have to run it through Google Translate to figure out what that means. And that's similar with a lot of people in my generation. And then the second thing is, I think just communicating some cultural norms. One thing that really stands out to me was once I went to Twin Oaks, that's like the former ambassador's residence for an event with the Taiwanese government. And then one official came up to me and said, it looks like you gained some weight. That's completely inappropriate in America, but maybe somewhat acceptable in Taiwan. So just bridging those gaps, I think is extremely, extremely important. So that's it. I don't know if you have time for questions.
Yeah, we'll open questions at the end.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and last but not least, we have David Tang. David has been dedicated to the preservation and promotion of Taiwanese culture since 2008. As principal of the Washington, D.C. Taiwanese School since 2019, he has led a period of rapid growth in student enrollment for Taiwanese language, Mandarin, and cultural studies. In 2021, he founded the Mandarin Learning Center to emphasize the importance of traditional Chinese characters in mainstream education. David currently serves as a board member of Rockville's Sister City Corporation in Maryland, helping to promote Taiwanese culture within the city of Rockville. He is an advisor for the Formosan Association of Student Cultural Ambassadors and co-founder of Millennial Global Youth. Since 2024, he has successfully hosted Taiwan Heritage Day events with the Washington Wizards and Nationals, elevating public visibility for the Taiwanese American community. So let's give it up for David.
My God, when I was hearing Adam talks, I'm almost hearing like ghost stories. Well, that's exactly what happened to me when I was in Taiwan. People said that I'm overweight. I need to go exercises. I'm so serious. It's totally inappropriate, but that's exactly what happened. Yeah, oh yeah, by the way, I got skinnier. So just press the arrow keys. Okay. All right, just like everybody, I mean, thank you for the introduction. Just like Bersa said, I have many titles. The reason why I have many titles, everything is in a way by accident, meaning that I don't plan for it. So when I come in with my journey, everything when you talk about personal journey, when I first came in, I came in to the Taiwanese school. By the way, let me introduce Taiwanese school. Taiwanese school is the only school that's not Chinese school where you still spend every Sunday afternoon, but we're the Taiwanese school. The identity we think the founders of the school think is very important. That most of the young that they got mixed up. When you ask the youngsters, are you American-born Chinese or are you American-born Taiwanese? Most of them don't clearly identify them. Most of them identify themselves beginning as I'm an American-born Chinese. That's sometimes because of the family, they are raised differently. But people who have we found that less and less. And that, especially in the Taiwanese school, that usually never happens. But I also mentioned that I was also the advisor for the Formosa. So that when that happens, I go out, then I actually help teach a group of the youngsters. They are from different, say, Chinese schools. You ask them the same question. They in the beginning, they almost say that they're American-born Chinese. Their identification is totally, in my mind, wrong from the beginning. So that's why my journey started with that. So when they say I started with 2008, I just like every parent, when I was young, I don't care about politics. I come in, I just trying to get through my college, somehow settle down, get married. Now I have kids. Now I need to find a school. I need to find a school to say, hey, I'm too lazy to teach language. Let me find someone to help teach. That's I'm being honest. That's how I originally started. But when I would start looking for that journey, when I go to the Taiwan-based school, so when they first come in, they are teaching the dialogue from Beijing. So when I come in, I was like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a school founded by Taiwan. Why are you teaching me all those kind of languages? So, well, the infiltration of the so-called Chinese school is very, very scary. So, in a way, when I was introduced as the school that's continuing to keep growing, in fact, the other school in the region, when I say the Taiwan-based Chinese schools, their student size are shrinking. So, in a way, I'm proud that our school is growing. Like I said, but overall, big picture, I'm worried because the size is downsizing. People keep saying that there are less Taiwanese American people are here in the region, but the fact is that's not 100% true. They're just not coming. They're just not coming out. We lose contact with them and whatnot. Oh, by the way, let's go to the next slide. So 2008 in 2019, somehow I become the principal of the Taiwanese school. I tried to get rid of that title. So far, very unsuccessful. So it's not something that people like to do. So when I say we found the Mandarin Learning Center in 2021, there's a reason why we do that. Just like I said, the shrinking size of the Chinese school teaching traditional characters. I see schools are either students enrollment are going down and schools are closing down, or schools are actually being flipped by China, by PRC. So, you go to a school that's 40 years ago, it's founded by Taiwan and teaching traditional characters. You go to 4 years later, they start teaching simplified characters, speaking almost like a different language to you. So that's when I was able to, people who know Taiwanese school, they know that the founders are very, very Taiwanese. They do not want to deal with Mandarin at all, almost from the beginning. Tim know that, he laughs. So it took me a while to convince them, why do I need to do that? It's not because right now, to me, it's not just because the Taiwanese language need to be preserved. It's almost like the whole culture or whole language system, including a traditional character system, that need to be, like, we got to pay extra attention to, and we got to help out. We got to work with the community. We got to work with different schools. We cannot just be the single Taiwanese school. We got to go out and work with the community. So, I saw one of the perfect slides saying that, we need to be, the whole reason why we decided to do Taiwanese Heritage Day is you want to be the vision of Taiwanese American into the, into the community. You want yourself to be heard. You want yourself to be proud. That's the whole reason why we're doing it. Oh my God, that's a lot of stress. I mean, come on, anyone been to the August Taiwan Day? See the cheerleaders, everything? Okay, but I'm telling you, that's a lot of stress. We're just trying to get everything settled down, get everything in. From every single event, I can tell you ghost stories behind them. So, like, for example, the Taiwan sister cities. Oh, when Tim talk about, like, making a sister city relation with Ilan, I can tell you the ghost stories on how hard it is to establish with Ilan. The first meeting I go to, there are split sides. The PRC side, almost the pro-PRC side, the pro-Taiwan side. The first meeting I go to ended at 2 a.m. Just trying to say, hey, let's just trying to bring that into the agenda. So that's why I'm serving as so that's why the whole long journey of the Rockville Sister City since 2008. Then I'm the FOSCA, then MGY, and of course I'm the proud member of FAPA. So I want to say that when when I say that we are kind of on two tracks, we really have one mission. So in culture, right, most of the time I'm dealing with our languages. What I deal with Taiwanese heritage. I try to teach the Taiwanese heritage to the kids that I know. Like, for example, Adam, you mentioned that you kind of start, like, knowing it much earlier when you're growing up, like, let's say college time frame, or even go to the OCAC tour. By the way, I make sure my kids go to the OCAC tours. So, but we trying to let them know when they're much younger. So in the Taiwanese school, we start teaching them the Taiwanese heritage by having different cultural events, by having different kind of celebrations, by encourage them and introducing the community news to them, that they get an early identification of being a Taiwanese American and then being proud of it. Of course, we talk about youth mentorship, and that's the perfect youth mentor I'm having right there. And political, So political, I personally, I'm in the Rockville sister city myself, so I'm actually more like engaged in I call that a city level. So we're trying to promote the obviously trying to promote the city to city relationship that's culture based. And I joined FAPA. Um, I joined TAB, but I have to be honest, my time is limited. I just simply can't do so much. So what I'm doing right now for those two cents, I'm trying to bring the bridge. I am bringing the information from FAPA, bringing the information from TAB. I'm bringing them to the Taiwanese school, where Taiwanese schools serve as the hub of the community that I can very easily get the information out to the people, to the family, that the organization they need to know of. So I'm serving at that role, considered at the political level. So in a way, they feel separated, but I'm trying to make them, at least I do my best, try to make them as one as possible. So so I got asked this question too, to make sure to separate the cultural and political space. This is my take. So in the culture spaces, obviously we deal with heritage, language, community. That's what I've been dealing with every day. So policy level, the policy legislation advocacy, I deal with that too. So I totally missed the FAPA advocacy last time because I actually take my kid up to the Keep Taiwan Free event in New York, just trying to show my kid, what it's like. So so my daughter Elizabeth has been doing that ever since she was little. So that's the part we do. So in the venues, like we basically we run schools. We run the schools that kids hate, have to attend every Sunday, and we run festivals. We run almost all the festivals that you can think of. The Autumn Festival we just run, but we run a little bit differently this time. We bring the Ma Zhou. I don't know if anyone know the goddess of sea in Taiwan. We bring that to the school. So it's kind of cool that the students were like, "What is that? Why are we throwing the Broadway? Trying to ask the goddess on the decision I make." The funny story is that my son was a senior right now, so he's trying to ask which school he's going. But that's besides the topic. So the policy level is the think tanks, embassy level, Capitol Hill. Been there, done that. Don't have time for it. So demographically, I'm dealing with most of the families. I deal with a lot of youth, and I deal with a lot of parents, sometimes angry parents. And when I was in FAPA or sometimes TAA, we're more a professional, young, more, believe it or not, it's more of a young people. And the advocacy is a hit and miss. Sometimes you got an older one, sometimes you got a younger one. So so the tone, I mean, everybody can read, what I want to say. But a lot of stuff, what I'm trying to learn from the policy level is I do not know how to talk formally. So I many times I pick up a habit of trying to talk with the kids. So so a lot of time I try to bring out a lot of stories, trying to be fun. I'm not trying to give you a lecture. I'm trying to be with you and talk to you. Okay, this is the one that I actually had to roll down the cheat sheets. So let me get on that. So so the first one we are talking about the the cultural organization can teach policymakers. So when we say the hold on. So for the first one, when the policymaker, so let's think of policy, see the policymaker not just the policy, just not the person who is dealing with the law, and not dealing with it could be anything. So think about. So I'm going to bring up a story like this. So let's just bring up so for example, for the MLB event, the Taiwan Day event just ended. The person they gave us a quota. Believe it or not, it has a quota. They're asking us if you can sell 1,000 tickets to make this event successful. So it is the previous one we've been there, we have 600. It is somewhat difficult trying to talk to them, trying to convince them, hey, we want to do this, we want to bring this element, we want to bring the cheerleader down that we can take, we want to show the Taiwan Day, we want to showcase the vice principal, making showers video. Even that is a very difficult one to have it show on the billboard. So all that all that, once we show them we have the 1,000 tickets, once they attend the events, once they are actually there, in this case, the policymaker is the nationals. When they are here, they see the difference. They're saying, they tell me this next year, let's make it 2,000. So when they are here, they see the difference. Another example I'm going to bring is the Bubble Tea Festival. I mean, Bubble Tea Festival is probably one of the most successful event that's running in there. You bring all the policymakers, you got mayors, the council members. When they were here, they come in, they come up, they see how many people are showing up in the Taiwanese American run Bubble Tea Festival. I can tell you because I was involved on the second year of that. Our funding was probably $3,000. So I think nowadays the funding go up to like at least 9,000. From the city of Rockville, they just grant you. So you show them the numbers, they will update their policy to help you out in a way. So of course the visibility is very important. So I have to say that I was lucky that I was talking to the person that worked with me a lot, like Lee Ho and Jennifer Lee. So when they see the in the Taiwan Day, they see the big Taiwanese American here, they show up big time on the billboard. They're like, oh my God, we made it. We're being shown, we're being seen. So something like that, it's important to bring up something we call that the something with the community. You're like, hey, we're here. We are being seen. And it's nice that Americans know that, hey, don't ignore us. We're not Chinese. Another one we want to show is that the visibility, for example, during the COVID pandemic, the Taiwanese school is actually one of the very few ones that we actually, when everything is shut down, we organize community. First of all, we distribute masks at that time. We bring the, we actually working with the community, try to get everybody to donate lunch boxes. And we deliver that to the hospitals. We deliver that to the first line, to the police during the COVID pandemic when there is no vaccine at that time. So we're being seen. We don't want Taiwanese American to be so separated. We want to let them know, the mainstream know that we are here. We are Americans. We're here to help. We're part of the community. That youth engagement, don't even mention it. So you think besides teaching the school, besides teaching, teaching the Taiwanese value, the everything that through their school, like my culture event, by teaching the classes, the stuff that I like to do, and being able to convince the teachers that are going with me, is we do outreaches. So we do something that's I don't know, Americans like fall festivals, right? So we go out, we host table. For example, we do Potomac Day. People are living in Potomac, Maryland. So Potomac Day, for example, you have they give you a free parade. Funding is important. So they give you a free parade. We can bring our banners showing that we're part of communities. So during the fall time, that's when a lot of people who want to run the elections, they're there. So it's actually the easiest time to meet the candidates. Most of the time they win. To show them that, hey, we're Taiwanese Americans, we're the youth, and we cared. I bring the youth. We go there. I bring them there. We do this kind of something called politic talks. I bring like say 5 or 10 like youngsters. We go up, we reach to them, say, hey, so and so, we're interested. We heard you're running. We're interested in what you have to say. We represent the Taiwanese Americans that we're in the community, and this is the youth. They cannot vote now, but hey, their parents can vote. How about let's talk about yourself. Talk about why are you doing this? Why, and stuff like that. We're being seen. They're like, oh, these people, even they can vote now. They're outreaching to me. I mean, I cannot take the youngsters to take them to do the, take them to the advocacy part, but I can do them in the force for the reach the candidate face, like face to face in person. We're right at the moment. All right, so definitely do that. So framing, like I said, framing is powerful. When I say framing, it's the stuff that I keep trying to learn. So, like for example, when I say, hey, I'm just running cultural events, there's another way you can turn that language around and just make it sound like you're much more powerful. You actually know what you're doing. That was a joke. So when I say access matters, so So it is, for example, I can bring you an example to you. So for example, Taiwanese school, we rent a place from Montgomery County. So when they don't let us use the board, or they want to increase, all of a sudden they want to increase the rent, or all of a sudden they want to put the security guard, cost $7,000 a year for you. This is a time that you can really use some help. You got to talk the policy languages. You got to know how to talk to them correctly. Being mad, showing up, that won't do anything. You gotta, you gotta go up. You gotta learn this kind of languages where you can find a person that are actually familiar with the policies. You seek their help, you can get it turned around. By the way, we did get the fee waived, and we do get someone who is really good that we can use the board. But this is not something that if you just run a school and you think that you're just by yourself, it's just like Tim said, there's no way you can not. Policy is always there. You have to learn it. You have to know how to deal with it. So this is an example, just from something from the funding, from the use of school equipment, something like that. Policy really help us. And of course, working together is a key. So how can Taiwanese American make a difference, right? Like I said, when I go to a school event, or I go to when I'm trying to be the teacher or the principal of the school, I am not expecting every parent to see the vision that I'm seeing. That everybody think of differently. Sometimes they don't want to do certain things. Like a lot of people doesn't care about policies. Some of them don't. Some of them seriously just don't. You just have to encourage them. Just for them to go attending the cultural events, just for them to teach your kids why I call it the right way. Every little bit helps, because when you plant those seeds, you have no idea when they'll grow. So that's how. So every time you feel like you're giving up, not. So that's exactly that's my fundamental policy when I hold a school. When I take over the school has about 89 students. So now it has 250. So it's still comparison. It's still not a big school, but that's what I'm trying to say is when things are, go back to a Taiwanese school history. You actually went down to like about 2 students that are actually there, and they still decided to say, you know what, even 2 students, we're going to run it. That's the school history. I was trying to remind myself not to think about it. So you want to bring them to engage in local government and education policy, just like I said. Bring them to fall festival, stuff like that. Even talk to the board of education. This is, for example, this is something that I found that policymakers, FAPA, they are all not thinking about it. The board of education, that's the one that really hits you hard. That can hit you in the fundamental level. They change you, but they don't. There's a disconnect there. They're looking at the big federal level, sometimes state level. They don't look at, when I say county level or city level. There's a natural miss because you don't have that kind of manpower. But so this is something that when we say the community, we get a community, we find the problems. Sometimes we go seek help because not everyone of us know how to do the policy languages. But you know what? Tim knows. Well, Annie knows. People like them knows. You bring the problem to them, they can help you out. You work together. So we're trying to making sure that the levels that they are not generally paying attention to, we can bring the information to them and say, hey, this is important. Please help us out. Look at this. And this is going to be really hitting, the fundamental levels. So of course, mentor youth and civic. I've been doing that. I forgot how many years. And we celebrate Taiwan, publicly and proudly. Obviously, I have mentioned that Taiwan Day. We're all proud of doing that. So, and of course, we can. Everybody can build a coalition across the sectors. So I want to let everybody know that the culture effort really matters. So most of us can host festivals, but most of you can go. So most of us, even think about something like this way. Anyone, parents, you run international nights? Anybody ever run the Taiwan table? No, right? So even something like a small to elementary school level, you want to run the international, you want to host a table that represent you are from Taiwan. Sometimes they even lack of. So the school developed, great, like you see you're saying. So school developed the whole SOPs, that meaning that, hey, we have a standard. If you want to run this, here is a checklist that we have for you. Here are the items. You can do it this way. Even though if you don't know how to do it, school have helped people who want to do that. So we can't, like I said, still not every family willing to do it because it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, but you can attend. So for example, if you see like FAPA tables, hosting the table, go say hi. Just give them a pat in the back, say, hey, you guys did a great job. And they make them feel good. They make them keep wanting to keep going. And that is what's important. And I jump ahead. Feasibility in schools, international night, for example, libraries. So for the we go hold teaching the adult Mandarin language withholding history libraries. We just finished hosting one in Oakton Library, the Mid-Autumn as the festival. So we bring the Tu Di Gong, I don't even know how to say that, the goddess of the land, that we bring that into the library, because we don't believe the Moon Festival is always about a separation of a god and a goddess flying to the moon. So we bring the Tu Di Gong, or bring a different kind of element for something to be different to be taught in the library, and we just want to show that the presence of Taiwan. So I think you heard Adam, you heard Tim talk voting. If you have, testified hearings, we don't do that. Let's not. I personally don't do that, but I'm sure a lot of people do that. Join the advocacy board. Like, I don't have time for FAPA a lot of time, but I do join. I'm the BOD for FAPA members in the DC chapters. I do my best to help, and we try to bring in the topics that FAPA are interested to the to the school or to the people that we care, because we are the good distribution center, and that bring up the Taiwan related legislations. What we can do, like, well, school by requirement is bipartisan, so we had to be very careful on how we do it. But we got it done, not cross the lines. So but I'm not going to talk too much about it, just in case. So so like I said, bridging roads are very important. I'm not saying, so for example, when I'm the principal of Taiwanese school. I'm not that they're like other Chinese schools founded for Taiwan in the region. Just because they teach differently, just because they don't always say Taiwan in their school and in their languages, I still believe that we need to work together, because every little bit helps. Just because they don't teach the culture activities in their class, but it doesn't mean that they're still doing that part. For example, teaching the traditional characters, teaching the bopomofo, and those are something that we do need to preserve at this moment. And beyond headline policy beliefs, there's a good talk. So like I said, I think a lot of time, key points: show up, speak out when you have to. So when Adam doing the census, by the way, we definitely in the school blast a lot out of that, making sure that that's being heard, everybody being right in. Build bridges, we just keep connecting them. And we are, for example, we do invite policy person to come into the school, doing talks to the students, of course, to an older student from middle school and up, about how you are as a Taiwanese American and whatnot. Any kind of policy. We do bring those policy talking to school. Sometimes they're less popular, unfortunately. Depends on how you are talking. So Empower Youth, just to let you know that we found youth is that actually they bring their energy. They bring you in a different thought. They bring you a different mindset. Like even I find my mindset is old when I'm trying to work with a second gen Liho over there. And he hit me hard with a lot of different kind of mindset, trying to talk to me. And sometimes to me, it doesn't make sense, but sometimes the outcome is very good. So you just have to, we just have to make sure that they're being empowered, they're being heard, and we are respecting them. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, David. So actually, can I have all my speakers come up to the Q&A table? So next, we'll just hear some brief remarks from Richard about sort of what we learned from their opening remarks, and then we'll get on to a little bit of Q&A to finish us off. So Richard, I'll just hand you the, or do you want to just? Okay, awesome.
First. You go that way. Okay.
Well, thank you so much again for having me join this really amazing panel of movers and shakers. And I'm very humbled to be in communion with this broader community and the discussions here tonight. So I just had a few quick notes that I was thinking about beforehand coming here tonight, but as well as kind of reinforcing after hearing the presentations of our three esteemed speakers here. And I'll just start with just a quick positionality of, well, where do I sit, or how is this also of significance to me? So I come from a Puerto Rican household myself. Born and raised in the mainland US, but there are many of the issues that I've lived through that really ring and resonate with me, that all three of you have talked about with regards to identity, activism, civic engagement, interculturalism, and navigating between different civic, political, cultural spaces. So that kind of frames my own thinking about this topic and some of the notes or thoughts that I wanted to share. The first area that I wanted to talk about is public diplomacy, listening, and the idea of cultural brokers. So listening, public diplomacy is one of the areas that I've had some professional background in, and one of the key elements of public diplomacy, which is having publics be a thrust of diplomatic connections, connectivity between different societies. One of the key tenets of effective public diplomacy is listening. And listening not only deals with the absorption of information, but also the interpretation, adaptation, and then sharing of that new information. And I believe that cultural organizations have an indispensable role in acting as cultural brokers within different societies that can help contextualize and socialize values and norms between societies and present those in different formats or communities. So let's get a little bit more specific here with regards to Taiwanese Americanness as well. So one issue that it comes up quite frequently in maybe diasporic studies is identity and who gets to decide how we define ourselves. One aspect that comes up that came up with this discussion with, for example, the right and census movement is the idea of how a bureaucracy or administration can paint or even suppress or define, dictate a cultural identity, and how that could paint in the long term a box of how communities may interpret themselves. And so cultural organizations as important cultural brokers that can understand and appreciate local contexts and communicate across different dimensions can have a role to play in advocating for small bureaucratic changes, things that happen in the long term, like writing in census, as well as taking up local positions. I find that the subnational diplomacy space, where we can still aim global by going local through state level, through city level, through community level activism, is a very important way to act on or engage in public diplomacy, in listening, and in that kind of cultural brokerage work between understanding different values or aspects of societies. A second component I felt was pretty recurring in the presentations was the incredibly indispensable role of education, of K-12 and post-secondary outreach. Education, schools in general, form a critical socializing ground for society, for not just in education, but how we normalize interactions and relationships between peoples, how we understand studying and creation of socialized memories between peoples. Luckily, here at GW, we've also taken an approach that looks at education by kind of asking ourselves, where can we see Taiwan in the curriculum? And are there spaces earlier on in the education track of the student that discussions on Taiwan, if the goal is to socialize American society more to US-Taiwan issues, where can we put Taiwan in the curriculum? And our team has done a few different activities, one of which that I'm quite fond of is working with Maryland middle schools in developing a cross-strait crisis simulation in which they take on roles of different countries and try to navigate avoid conflict in the Taiwan Strait. And by doing so, these students presented questions to us and the facilitators and speakers with the same kind of questions that I find be talked about often here in DC. For example, issues on semiconductor manufacturing, on missile deployments, on democratization issues, and how Taiwan is a relatable and intersectional subject across many countries. And again, these are 7th and 8th graders that are presenting these kinds of questions. So the sooner that I believe we can talk in a nuanced and deliberate way these issues, it makes me more excited for the future of what kind of conversations and connectivities that we can build afterward. And so all the efforts of our speakers in building up education programming in mentorship is incredibly important. One last anecdote about that crisis simulation. One of the students, I'm told, she's Taiwanese, and this exercise was the first time that she saw herself in a significant way in the curriculum. And she was incredibly excited, proud to kind of take a center stage role in that exercise. And she represented Taiwan. And I'm told that her parents also communicated with the teachers and just expressed how meaningful that experience was for the student, for the family, and for the whole class to get to know their friend in a new and very significant way. So education does have a very profound effect, and thank you all for your efforts in investing in that. And the last observation is the importance of coalition and community building across not just different communities and sectors, but I'll also mention, tying back into my own positionality, allyship building across different ethnic, racial, and identity communities across the United States. Two thinkers thinkers and writers who influence a lot of my thinking nowadays, Leona Chen and Professor Xini Cheng. They did a really amazing interview together that I highly encourage all of you to read sometime that kind of talks about these types of issues of coalition building and getting Taiwan understood in different and new contexts. And Professor Xini Cheng identifies that for US-Taiwan relations or for kind of support for military conflict in the Taiwan Strait, would you support US military intervention among, based on a 2022 survey among Black and Hispanic surveyors, less than 30% agreed to military intervention. Most either did not know enough to give a confident answer or a hard no. So when it comes to why is socialization, coalition, allyship building, where does that relate to policy decisions? If our idea or goal is to make Taiwan, US-Taiwan relations a priority that's shared by all American communities, not just elite-based areas that have a certain take on policy issues and not just certain parts of American society. If we want to show that it's in the interest of all of American society, where do we start that socialization process? And I do feel that education is one of those, at least that our team here has endeavored to engage directly. So I think that building more allyship and kind of inviting or exploring these connections between different groups in the United States, how Taiwan's journey and experiences in the diaspora in Taiwan relate to other places can create really powerful and new friendships, new connections. And that's ties back into my personal journey, because first going to Taiwan, I feel like I started to learn more about Puerto Rico and its own history after recognizing that these two are island nations with a very fraught history of colonialisms, of imperialisms, whose people are now confronted with different choices that are pushed by different geopolitical factors, by larger powers factors. About on these islands, is it Is there a future where we can determine ourselves? Is there a future of independence, of status quo, of integration with something larger? And I can be talking either about Puerto Rico or about Taiwan. And so that's where I really encourage this kind of exploration of coalition building, of mutual or resonating experiences, and the kinds of new bonds that can form between communities to raise the profile and communities of care, communities that are listening to each other. So I hope this conversation is the start of many more like it. And again, thank you so much to our panelists for doing such great work in community building and for being here tonight.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mr. Haddock. So if you would like to ask our panelists a question, just raise your hand and I think Bobby will come around with the microphone. Oh, we have one question over here.
Hi, my name is Eric Lachica. I'm the coordinator for the U.S. Filipinos for Good Governance. You know, I'm very timely, this panel discussion. Over the past decade, since I've coordinated actions at the Chinese embassy protesting China's aggression against the Philippines, the West Philippine Sea, working with our Vietnamese American communities, our Tibetans. And I remember a few years ago, I'd been trying to reach out to the Taiwan office, trade office, the ambassador and his folks by email. They never responded. I was trying to see if there were any Taiwanese Americans who were interested in joining our protest actions against China's aggression. But I realized the political atmosphere has changed dramatically over the past few years. The one China policy of the Philippines has dramatically changed over the past year. Right now, there's a strong engagement of the Philippine government to work ties with the Taiwanese government, and also people to people, disaster preparedness, civil defense. In fact, I was there in Taipei. I visited the first time in March just to assess the situation. You know, we have more than 200,000 Filipinos who live in and work in Taiwan. And as President Bongbong Marcos recently said, if the Taiwanese contingency happens, the Philippines will be dragged fighting and crying into supporting the Taiwanese people. So with that context, I appreciate the great overview of how we can work closely, alliance building, forming coalitions. So feel free to contact our organization, our network. I'm also a member of the National Federation of Filipino American Associations and the so-called bilateral or trilateral strategy should be strengthened between Taiwan, the Philippines, and the United States. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that comment. Yes, we actually addressed the issue of Taiwan-Filipino relations and the need for strengthening that connection at our annual symposium last week. So if you're curious, we had a really brilliant speaker speak on that. Does anyone else have any questions for our panelists? Oh, I think Adrian does.
Hello, I'm Adrian Wu. I'm a senior programs manager with Global Taiwan Institute. Yeah, and thank you so much for your excellent presentations. I wanted to ask, so as someone who myself, I also study soft power, I wanted to ask about how you leave room in the space for Taiwanese Americans specifically. I think in diaspora communities, there's a little bit of a dialogue sometimes between trying to represent Taiwanese culture that's from Taiwan, as well as representing Taiwanese American culture that is being created and changing within the US. So I was wondering how you sort of see that interplay of the two different types of culture and how you also elevate Taiwanese American culture while also elevating Taiwanese culture and thinking about that dichotomy.
I guess I could speak a little bit to that. I'm involved with an organization called Taiwanese American Next Generation, and that's a summer camp. We have about 400 people gather at Westchester University, and it's cross-generational, 3 generations, the elder generation, my generation, and our kids. And the kids are often mixed race because that's the nature of a lot of Taiwanese who are been in this country since the 1970s. And the root of any Taiwanese American culture would have to be Taiwan. And so much of Tang is to get in touch with Taiwan, you know. But then beyond that, it's also being comfortable in your own skin. And I think, especially for some of the biracial kids, they're not necessarily going to be accepted as Taiwanese in Taiwan. But in Tang, if you have roots in Taiwan, you're universally accepted. Now, how that culture plays out, it's going to be different for each family because America has people in so many different socioeconomic backgrounds. But the common root, at least what I see, is still going to be Taiwan. And so how that relationship interplays is always different. My children are third gen, you know, their relationship is not as tight as second gen, but they still have the right to identify themselves as Taiwanese Americans. So is there anything specific that's Taiwanese American? I think that'll come out to light if the numbers go up, you know, and researchers like yourselves will be able to come up with metrics for that.
I can speak a little bit to this. I think with every generation, there has to be a customized approach to it. One example I can think of is a year or two after I moved to DC, I taught at a Chinese school, and they specifically, or a Taiwanese school, and they specifically wanted me to teach because they wanted someone who can relate to the younger generation. When I was in Chinese school, our teachers, when we had an incorrect answer on the test, they would tell us to write a character like 50 times, right? That is definitely not going to work for someone in a younger generation who grew up here in the States. So I just think for every generation, we just have to make a little tweaks just to cater towards kind of what their experience, what their culture is.
Well, I guess I encounter more of that in the school because in the school, I myself, because I came to the States when I was 14-year-old, I'm considered as a 1.5 gen. So, you know, my kids are considered second gen, but in the school, a lot of parents are already second gen. So their kids are third gen. So for example, recently I've been approached by my, one teacher and saying that she wants to bring a speaker that's going to talk about like a Taiwanese American identity and who we are and, you know, what kind of, like for example, culture group we're doing identifying. I was like, wait a minute, we're at school already doing that a lot. She's like, whoa, that's your first gen thinking. So so just like something like that, what you're saying is, in the school I have learned, just like many times, to listen, because my idea is not always right. So in the meantime, I say, you know what, let's do it. I still could be wrong because the way how I think that I already taught the school a lot, I already emphasized a lot. Sometimes there may not be enough because I do not because I found that when I was working for Taiwan, I'm working a lot with the second generations. I found that I swear we're talking the same thing, but we're understanding it a little bit differently. That is the gap. That is the gap that when we say that, hey, I sometimes have like Taiwanese thinking in a head, but there, in fact, that there's American value or something that add on to it that just cause the differences, and that's the difference that we need to work it out. And most of the time, listen and see what they have to say and trying to adapt. And that's what Taiwanese school has been doing. And so that's why we keep moving forward that way.
Thank you for that question. Oh, we have a question here. And we'll have, let's take these two questions, and I think our time is a little bit limited. So let's hear both questions and we'll answer it. And then if the panelists have time, they can stay a little after for further discussion. But let's just take both of these questions.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm a student GW. Thank you, every speaker, outstanding speech. Particularly, I appreciate the first speaker introduced Taiwan independence movement in America. This movement influenced American Taiwan policy, achieved outstanding achievement. My question is, under Trump second administration, Trump only focus economic interest, technology profit, but ignore democracy value. For democracy is Taiwan identity culture, and Taiwan use democracy value influence American foreign policy. Under this situation, how can Taiwanese people use democratic value, identify your identity, and influence American Taiwan policy?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that question. And let's take the question over here and we can answer them both simultaneously to wrap up our panel.
Hi, thank you again for talking tonight. I kind of what Mr. Haddock, what you had touched on. I was curious when you're speaking about education institutions, just with recent attacks and changes on DEI specifically at higher education institutions. I'm just curious how about kind of I guess amplifying representation on like higher education's institutions and having those spaces kind of be like breeding grounds for discussion and presence. How I don't know, just how like how you might pivot in terms of amplifying presence on college campuses, and just especially if I've seen from my recent university that I've graduated from, their like programmings have been kind of under attack. So with like decreased university support, like from the administration, like how might you just pivot from those changes and everything to still amplify presence?
Thank you so much. Okay, so we have two questions about under the recent events under the Trump administration, sort of how that affects your cultural work and how that informs how you frame Taiwanese American activism. So would love to hear your thoughts.
So I had just attended the FAPA National Advocacy Conference that Henry and Felix were so involved with here. And we have different talking points depending on who we were talking to. Often when you talk to a more liberal-minded person who cares about democracy in the US Democratic Congress, you can still use those values when you approach them. But when you approach more of a realpolitik, practical-minded person, we used arguments like 5% of the global economy flows through the Taiwan Straits. You know, a war in the Taiwan Straits could cost the global economy more than what COVID costs the American economy. So the goal of deterrence should be in everyone's interest. You know, so you use more of that economic terms, you know, beyond chips. Obviously there's the chips, but beyond the chips, we just use, look, there's the global interests, and there's at any point in time, there's 80,000 US citizens in Taiwan at this moment in time. You know, of course, as FAPA's vision and goal as deterrence, we would love it to be 100,000, 200,000. You know, I mean, this is good for Taiwan's economy and good for deterrence, and good for, these are the, I mean, we will constantly brainstorm, but Taiwan is an integral part of the global economy. We also know from the security perspective, if Taiwan falls to China, that radically changes what happens with Japan, the Philippines, and South Korea. Whether they want to believe it or not, they will be directly affected, as will their security posture. So we want to talk about building coalitions with everyone. I look forward to sharing my contact information with you, sir, and hopefully we can all work together. But that's my perspective. And these were the talking points we gave. And just to plug what FAPA did at the NAC, two of the legislations that we pushed was to codify the 6 assurances, and the other one was to get Taiwan into NATO plus designation so weapons could be more easily sent to Taiwan. Both of those have moved out of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and I believe in a week or so, it's going to try to move out of the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. And these are all, and Maryland Senator Van Hollen's pushing one of them, you know, and all the House members that we met with voted for it. So.
Amazing. Thank you, Tim. And then do we have any thoughts about the impact of cutting DEI or attacks on DEI programs on college campuses and how that impacts Taiwanese American activism?
I can't speak for
Or yes, actually, yeah.
Yeah, happy to chat a little bit about that. Excellent, very timely question. The discourse over time evolves sometimes in brave ways, sometimes in very startling ways. And so how we adapt to those, I guess, discourse issues over time, just in the abstract. I find that educators at the local level are finding creative ways to adapt to current priorities in education administration. For Taiwan specifically, and the work that we do here at the university, I think a crucial way that ties a little bit into one of the observations I made earlier about building allyship or coalition building or creatively seeing how Taiwan relates or resonates to a variety of contexts is to uh, keep keep Taiwan intersectional, keep Taiwan relevant to a multi varied of subjects that we can bring up Taiwan as important, illustrative, educational cases in a variety of topics. So, for example, one of the events that we did that garnered a lot of attention, positive attention, is a Taiwan Beyond Boba event. So it's looking at Taiwanese history, but through culinary arts and traditions in Taiwan, from Japanese colonial era to different Chinese-related influences, to American influence, to indigenous influences as well. So to kind of get at your question a little bit, I think it's uh, creatively finding ways to bring up not just Taiwan, but also area studies in general, and how it's critical to different areas of study so that it becomes just embedded across different subjects. It's harder to root out or isolate a particular subject. And this is also how we try to address how can we find Taiwan in the curriculum. One way is through cases to show that Taiwan is relevant in energy policy, in environmental preservation, and democratic development in many ways. And in that way, we also get more people to become exposed to Taiwan, take an interest in Taiwan, and find a way to incorporate Taiwan in their own lives and future. So I hope that gives some optimism that there's Taiwan itself is an incredibly important case that's relevant in many academic fields. And I think that's one way we're still able to talk about this in many other area subjects through the evolution of education administration.
Thank you so much, Mr. Haddock. And I do think this calls attention to the fact that we are very lucky that Taiwan is sort of, in some ways, one of the few issues that remains bipartisan in our country. And so just, working hard to make sure that politicians and people of all political ideologies here in the US can see that Taiwan is important to them and worth caring about is extremely important. And in that way, the Taiwan issue is sort of a model for how we can try to get people of different political leanings to still talk to each other and work together in a day and age where that seems increasingly difficult. And so I think that's one of the things we're very grateful for as people who work on Taiwan issues, and something we really try to preserve, the bipartisan nature of this issue. Yeah, and so keeping in mind your very precious time, I think we're going to wrap up the official part of the panel now. If you have additional questions and our panelists have a couple extra minutes, feel free to come up to the table and ask them. But please give them a big round of applause for their time and comments. Thank you so much. Oh, no. Thank you so much. Wait, we might want to get a group picture. Let me ask. If we want to get a
I actually want